Welcome! We are reaching out to you with another episode of In Conversation with Hirushi.
Excuse me, I think this is Gehan Couray's Meeting of the Minds, not In Conversation with Hirushi. See, the thing is, I've already been on your show, but this is my show, my dear.
My bad.
And we're in my hotel room, hence the beds. I don't... yes. So,
my bad. I apologize.
Well, I forgive you on account of your beauty and your intelligence.
Thank you.
And your sweetness and your femininity and all the other qualities that my guy friends in America no doubt admire all the way from across the seven seas. Yes.
It's a reflex, Gehan. I'm super excited to be on your show.
Oh my gosh, likewise. Seriously, are you quite comfortable?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
I'm enjoying probably one of the best mochas I've had in the country.
I shall tell my kitchen downstairs.
Yes.
Because honestly, Hirushi, you're the only guest that I've allowed the luxury of coffee, because normally I serve my guests tea because I'm a tea drinker.
Aww.
But you get the special treatment. Because, yes, exactly. So, well, I mean, I must say your attire is lovely, very...
Thank you. I thought I looked like Headmistress Queller from one of the TV shows I've been watching, but...
No. You look like a daughter of the earth with the green,
You look like the seas.
I look like the seas, the seven seas.
Which is why we probably might have to come up with a nice number about the sea later on. Are you ready?
You want to start with the song? Okay.
You want to? Okay, let's do
Sure.
it. Let's do it.
Something from The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. 3, 2, 1. The seaweed is always greener in somebody else's lake.
She dreams about going up there, but that is a big mistake.
Well, just look at the things around you, right here on the ocean floor.
Such wonderful things around you. What more could you be
looking for?
Oh, yeah.
Under the sea. Under the sea. Darling, it's better down where it's wetter. Take it from me, take it from me.
Up on the shore they work all day, out in the sun they slave away, while we're devoted full time to floating under the sea.
That was so perfect.
That was perfect.
Yes.
Well,
I think you brought so much color into it.
yeah.
Why, thank you.
But seriously, Hirushi, on the subject of the seven seas and the earth, one thing that really struck me was when you once told me, honestly, you're the only person, other than myself, who has made a distinction between the earth and the world. Because, ladies and gentlemen, most people think that the earth is the world, but that is not correct. And Hirushi can tell you more about why that is. Because, the earth is a natural thing. Mother Nature constitutes the earth, really. The world is a man-made construct. And so the world is not really synonymous with the earth, despite what people think, because the world is something that really came about a couple of thousand years ago with the advent of civilization, although civilization has also gone a little out of hand recently. So, Hirushi, if you could just talk about the distinctions between the earth, which is natural, and the world, which is artificial and kind of toxic in a way.
Of course. So, it's kind of incredible how you're opening the discussion with something that we bonded over, actually, Gehan. And I think, speaking of the minds, this is something that you ought to speak about. Yeah. To me, I always found out, we always were so busy separating us from the rest of the universe. Okay, inside the skin is me, and outside the skin, it's not me. It's me against the world. And we've developed this ego to separate ourselves from this beautiful entity of energy and this ecosystem that gives us life. So I think the world is definitely a part of the earth, but the entire earth is not the world. And there's a part where the world is hurting the earth. Whereas the earth, with so much gratitude, is trying to protect the world, sustain it. But after all, if you give bad toxicity, you're going to receive that back. Mm-hmm. And the fascinating thing is, if you take this entire timeline of our existence, how we've, how civilization came into place, and the scholars started writing about love, success, wealth, strategy. And somewhere down the line, we lost that spirituality, the purity of what we want to do, where we come from, where we're going. Mm-hmm. And I think losing that connection has made us think, have this false sense of idea that we are superior from the rest of the system. And the moment something that happens, like, the earth responds to it, we all of a sudden realize, okay, we're not as big as we think we are.
Yep.
So I think even though we think it as a disaster, we label it as a disaster, it's basically the earth's way of balancing itself. So I think the whole idea of civilization has given us so much of pride, so much of confidence, but pride and confidence without kindness, without moral conscience is pure arrogance. So
Yes.
to me, I think somewhere down the line we became successful, we became dominant, and we kind of lost the whole purpose of what it means to be kind, what it means to be morally conscious. So I think that is something we need to work on.
Absolutely, Hirushi, because actually, ladies and gentlemen, when she mentioned the arrogance of mankind while we were talking a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, I really love this girl, because I feel like mankind is really one of the Earth's children, one of many children, and yet that one child has become so arrogant and ungrateful, like you said, Hirushi, to the point of poisoning the earth and destroying the rest of our Mother Earth's beautiful children, flora, fauna, you name it. We have, well, not you and I, but our fellow mankind has caused great harm to our brothers and sisters. Like, oh gosh, time for another song. The rainstorm and the river are my brothers, the heron and the otter are my friends, and we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends.
Aww, so beautiful.
No, but I mean, see, and that's the other thing, Hiroshi. I mean, you're really beautiful, but not just physically, but you're a beautiful soul, because ladies and gentlemen, when she was talking about kindness and empathy, she's not just saying that, that's really who she is.
And thank you. And I think it's important for us to know that, we're just a vessel passing through time, and something, we're always subject to change, this body, the way we look, the way we present ourselves, and there's something within us that is eternally there, and
right.
There's something that, that can manifest in the world, like our thoughts,
yes.
Our intentions, that even though it's intangible, even though you cannot see it, you cannot put a shape or a color to it, that is what eventually progress
Takes
into
shape.
Action, to behaviors, to lifestyles, to decisions, and that is what's going to manifest in the physical world. So I think just because we can't see it, we can't put a price tag on it, we can't auction it, we don't have a materialistic value to it, we often underestimate it, but that's where everything begins. It's always on the inside.
And I think that's where civilization begins, Hiroshi, right?
Of course.
It begins with that thought, with that principle, that spark of moral conscience within us,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
And I think, ladies and gentlemen, there are very few people who are capable of such abstract thinking, because I think we live in such a material world that we get hung up with all the worldly things around us.
Yes, sometimes it's hard to have a conversation.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult. Sometimes you feel a little alone in thinking that way. But then, you can, but the good thing is you can always talk to people, but on different levels.
Right, exactly.
It's a different string that you need to pull. So I think this same conversation you can have with different people from different levels, different entities in different ways. We just need to know how to customize the conversation, how to approach. So I think, so that's why I think when it comes to political changes, policy-wise changes, sometimes it's hard to make that difference because people are very complex. Like the person who's in the north, person who's in the east, person who's in the metropolitan city, they're all going to think differently. So if you have a common goal, you have to talk to each and every person in a very customized way so they understand it from their end. So I think what we do is we're too generalized when it comes to sending our messages. We're not willing to adapt and go to upgrade or downgrade to a level where a person can understand us. So we need to empathize, we need to find a way to customize that conversation. So I think that's why I like to talk one-on-one to people, because I know, like, I like to make speeches in public. I like to talk to people to, inspire them to make the better differences. But for most of them, it might not exactly translate into their head the way we want it to. So I think I think we need to be able to have a conversation with anyone, be it someone on the road, being someone around, it doesn't matter. We need to empathize and make sure we have that unique relationship with individual people.
An Oscar-eligible feature film by Sri Lankan American actor, classical baritone singer and film producer Gehan Cooray. The Billionaire is Gehan Cooray's own adaptation of a 1930s play by George Bernard Shaw. The film won the Best Comedy Feature Award at the Burbank International Film Festival. and is now eligible for Oscar nominations in the Best Picture, Best Actor and Best Adapted Screenplay categories. One of the proudest moments for Sri Lanka. Watch The Billionaire at your nearest Colombo cinema.
Absolutely, Hirushi. The ability to talk to each people on their level and relate to them, this one-on-one thing I think is super important because it's so easy to hide in a group, I think.
Oh yeah,
right?
I think we've all been there, kind of.
We've all been there. I mean, as an only child, I've always loved one-on-one conversations because you can really get to know a person, get to know their mind, their heart, their soul, and
Definitely.
And I think unfortunately with most children, I think what happens is, sadly in Sri Lanka, I mean, you and I have attended local schools here.
Of course, I'm a Visaki and you went to St.
Joseph's College.
Yeah.
And I think what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is because our classes here are so huge, whereas in the United States where I now live, classes are maybe like 20 children tops.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if you could talk about the value of having smaller classes, Hirushi, so that teachers can really mold each individual.
Yeah, so I think what we were telling earlier was that the importance of having a very emotionally intimate conversation with someone. Because I'm not saying it's practical for us to go and talk to 8 billion people out there, but we have so much time.
Right.
Like if you take our entire life, we have so much of time where we can talk to enough and more people and make the better differences. And I think even from an education level, we have to know, especially in the government schools, we've both been to government schools. Right. I've seen so many children hiding behind the shadows. They have immense potential, but they cannot keep up with this typical curriculum, the typical bar that is set equally to everyone. Because, for example, I had friends who were so good their brain was wired to do art, like they're so good at it. But no teacher was really paying attention to listen to them because art was always an optional subject.
Right.
And and also there were people who were who had the genetic tendency to be very athletic, super potential, but it was never like a main thing. It was always like, even for PE, like we had a PE period, like physical education period, even that we used to allocate it to like mainstream subjects because we were so busy trying to cover the syllabi and so I feel like everyone's bodies, brains, minds, heart, it is very uniquely made to fill a certain gap in the world, but it's just a mainstream curriculum doesn't really help them create a voice for it. So I think being in a huge class where always the frontline kids get like access to the teacher and running out of time, trying to fill deadlines, trying to cram things for assignments, like more than that, I feel like we need to focus more on cognitive thinking and also building a relationship with a student because that is the most important thing. For example, if we think like if a kid is coming from a toxic family background, like his or her only second chance at being a better person is through school.
Yes.
Right? So I'm like, once this kid leaves the house and if the family or their family institution is not doing justice, they can still come to school and have a second chance at seeing the world in a proper way and doing things right. So if a teacher is not there to listen to them at that point, I mean, it's really heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
So I think, I left school quite a long time ago, but I hope it's getting better in terms of developing proper like an emotional intimacy with kids, because at that age you're so fluid, you're willing to learn, let go, modify, add, remove things, so at that age, that is the age that adults have a responsibility of making sure like they create better generations. So talking about interpersonal relationships, also as much as the intensity of relationships, the consistency is also very important. I think it's not like a hit and run situation. If you have friendships, you have to make efforts to make sure it's a sustainable friendship, and you have to drop the toxic traits. You have to make sure you protect and care for it, because it's just like a plant. If you stop watering it, if you just keep it on the table, it's going to die. But if you keep nurturing it, it'll grow. So even human relationships are like that.
And ladies and gentlemen, Hirushi just reminded me of something that the great Audrey Hepburn once said. Audrey Hepburn loved gardening, she loved flowers, and she also likened the molding of a child's mind to nurturing a plant and seeing the little sapling grow to fruition and become the tree that it was meant to be. And Hirushi, you raised an excellent point about how malleable children's minds are at that age. Because, you know, ladies and gentlemen, when I studied psychology at the University of Southern California, we were taught that by the time you're 18, your personality is essentially set. It's set. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, when you come up with these personality disorders like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, even sociopathy, which is known as antisocial personality disorder, all of that can be circumvented as long as the child receives sufficient guidance and nurturing as a child, all the way through their teens consistently.
Yeah.
If there's a break in that nurturing, that love, that guidance from childhood to adolescence, all the way up until the age of 18, that's when the child can develop a mental disorder or a personality disorder. And I think, Hirushi and I were talking about how our generation, I think we're a little more mindful than our parents, perhaps, where...
I think it's mainly because, there are a lot of circumstances, to be honest, but I think the world was at a point where they were still recovering from the damages of the past, even Sri Lanka as an entity, we were going through numerous challenges, wars, natural disasters, diseases, epidemics, economic stabilities, and also changing the political structure. We went from like a feudal thing to monarchy to imperialism to democracy. We've been through quite a lot.
In quick succession.
We've been through quite a lot. And the political structures also have, it's a manifestation of what a human mind is. In a democracy, a citizen behaves differently. They have to learn to think for themselves. But I feel like we've got so comfortable listening to the command of a higher, like a leader, a person, we tend to forget to think for ourselves sometimes. Yeah. So I think, so if you take in the historical time, there are challenges that we have to overcome. So it's fair that we're not perfect, and it's fine. Right. I feel like we should never be hard on ourselves because we didn't have a great past or we made mistakes in the past. It's all about moving on. It's all about this moment and how we take it forward. So I think our parents' generation was bearing the residues of their previous generation, which they were bearing from their previous generation. So it has been kind of adding up over time. But I see we're gifted with, having access to information and also being in integrating societies, like, more than earlier. Now we have access to get a global education, to see other cultures. And also I think it's important, I think even the government should find its way to send gifted students abroad.
Absolutely.
Because what I realized was when I was abroad, when I went outside from Sri Lanka, because I was relatively, I was a spoiled girl. My parents gave me everything. They gave me all the comforts, and being in my school.
And I forget, are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I'm the youngest and only girl, but I have 2 elder brothers.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
you're the little princess, right?
Yeah. So, and even in school, I was known for things like for doing stuff. So I was not exactly unpopular, but I was all right. I was doing well. So I had that, all the comforts and everything. But once you moved abroad,
absolutely,
you finally get to see the world from the eyes of an outsider.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You become a minority. Yep. You become an immigrant. You become an outsider. So I really like that because it gave you so many challenges that you had to overcome. You're no more Hirushi. You're like a 18-year-old Sri Lankan girl, immigrant student. You're categorically named more than being Hirushi Jayasena. So
you're
later
the
on,
other.
And so later on, you have to, work your way up to a point where people are not going to be like, oh, you're the cute Sri Lankan. Instead of that, they will be like, oh, Hirushi.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
So you have to upgrade yourself. You have to work really hard so people could remember your name.
Right.
So whereas here, it's so easily given to you, right?
Absolutely.
So I think because we have access to global education, we have access to, at least through the internet, to see the other issues that are happening. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement, and also so many things that are happening in the Orient. We get access to what other people are going through simply because they're different to another group of people or something like that. So I think this has made us quite receptive and sensitive to what's happening, and we get to be a part. We get to be a participant in having an opinion about the issue. So
global issues.
Yeah, global issues.
Yeah.
So I think it could work either way, but I think our generation has luckily managed to find a balance and to call it out, be like, hey, that's not right. So I think having access to platforms like that can create that change that our parents' generation couldn't.
Right.
So we can also make them proud. And sometimes even at my household, like we would have certain arguments about certain things. I'm like, no, mama, like this is how we think. This is how New World thinks. And we investigate into it, they're like, oh, you do have a point. And they love to listen to us. So I think we can make those changes. It's possible.
No, I'm really inspired by your optimism, Hirushi, because I think that's the beauty of humanity, right? Our optimism for the future. And like you said, it doesn't matter what we've gone through in the past. It's about who we are today and who we can be tomorrow, and a better version of ourselves in the future, right?
Exactly.
And absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, what Hirushi said, I experienced myself in the United States. I mean, she studied at the University of Central Florida.
Yes.
And I was at the University of Southern California. And, they don't know who Gehan Cooray is. They don't know who the Courays are. They don't know what Jetwing is. Some of them don't even know what Sri Lanka is.
Yeah. And instead of asking where's Sri Lanka, they're like, what is Sri Lanka?
What is Sri Lanka?
Well,
exactly.
It's not a song.
It's not a song. And even for me, it's like leaving that safety net. I mean, I think I was also perhaps on the one hand, one might say that I had all the comforts of obviously growing up with my mother Shiramal Cooray.
She's amazing.
And I think my mom, but see, on the other hand, my mom and I haven't always had a perfect relationship. And I think now that I've, studied overseas and I've come back with a different perspective, like Hirushi said with her parents, I'm able to have a more adult relationship with both my parents, so that they hear my point of view. They may not agree with it in the moment, but they'll think about it. It'll percolate through their minds, and then they'll see where I'm coming from and respect me all the more for it, as I'm sure your parents respect you, right?
And I think the other thing we have is, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't listen to adults. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But when it comes to experience, experience also has to be relevant.
Right.
So if someone has 15 years of experience in operating a DVD player, and he's like, I have this much experience in operating a DVD player, and no one uses DVD players anymore, that experience becomes irrelevant.
Null
right?
and void. Yeah.
So when it comes to even tackling, like having intergenerational conflicts, sometimes there are things that we could teach them in terms of living in this modern world, where there's drug use, there's like trafficking, there's like on digital cyberbullying. Like we are born into an ecosystem which they might not be familiar with, so we can guide them and teach them.
Yes.
And there the age doesn't matter.
Yes.
Right? So it's a mutual teaching thing. They can teach us things from their experience of parenthood and going through things. And there's so much you can learn from adults. And also they also can learn things from us. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful to see how age, the demographics are out of the equation when it comes to experience, because each and every one has something to offer on the table, right? So I think that is the most beautiful thing, especially I've had with my parents. Like my dad is one of the most hardworking surgeons, one of the most senior most surgeons in the country. And up to date, he would still ask for my advice about things. He'll be like, Hirushi, I know you're young, but you have you're way more experienced in this. So I'm just going to ask you, how can I do this? So it's not like, oh, you're just a kid. I'm the adult here. Like there's nothing like that. So I feel like we also have to, as a world, if we're going to move forward, we have to not take the whole demographic thing too serious. Oh, you're a woman, you won't understand this. Oh, you're not like a strong guy, so you wouldn't know what this is. Like I feel like we should leave the demographic divisions aside, because that could really cause lack of communication. And it's all about emotional intelligence, being understanding to each other, communication styles, understanding each other's communication styles. It's entirely to do with that. So I think that's something that's like a silver lining I see for us to move forward. Yeah. And
we will hold on to that silver lining, ladies and gentlemen, with all our hearts, because as Hirushi said, it's not about age, it's not about gender, it's not about your country of origin, it's about your knowledge, it's about your experience, it's about your empathy.
And your value system.
Your morality. I mean, honestly, I think I've had the good fortune of having several conversations with Hirushi on her show, now on my show, and of course, she's. We've become fairly close in a very short period of time.
Definitely.
I look forward to seeing where she goes in the future. I think she's a budding young star.
Aw, and
I
I'm
hope we
excited
can
for you
collaborate
too.
together. Yes.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is what it should be like. This is how you connect with people. This is how you converse with people. This is how you understand people. How you understand one another. This has been Gehan Couray's Meeting of the Minds. A little unconventional today in a hotel room, but that was the lovely Hirushi Jayasena. We will see you next time. And I hope you've taken everything she said to heart. And Hirushi, we wish you all the very best.
Thank you again. I'm super excited for the rest of your additions to this show. So thank you so much for having me.